Dead by Daylight is one of my favourite horror games I play almost every day. And to be honest with you, I think it's one of the sickest badass games I have ever experienced, alongside Call of Duty and GTA 5. But if I were to be straight with you all, it can be a real pain in the butt when you play as a survivor, even as a killer. But mostly as a survivor, I'd say, since killers tend to win more in public matches. Of course, Call of Duty is frustrating when it comes to playing zombies, hard-level campaigns and any multiplayer servers, but you learn how to become so good at them and avoid making any mistakes. Even in GTA 5, like when you're about to be shot by the police or by any other player, then you have higher chances of not dying if you were to eat snacks and put on your armor straight away. There is nothing like that you can do in Dead by Daylight but accept your fate and lose. I guess it really depends on what perks you carry and when it comes to team cooperation, much more challenging than the other two games. So in this video, I'd like to talk about my ranking of the killers, and give my opinion of why I consider some of them superior and some of them inferior, depending on their abilities, perks, add-ons, speed and movement. Number 39 is Nurse. Now, a lot of people may argue with me and consider Nurse to be one of the best killers to play as in DBD. I will admit, she is a pretty sick character, especially when playing against her. Sure, you have the ability to teleport to walls and down your targets by surprise, but as you can see, the main issue with Nurse is, well, it really does take a lot of time to play as her. What I mean by that is, when playing as this killer for the very first time, you can't expect to get all 4 kills as a starter. This indeed does apply to other characters, but with Nurse, it's a lot different. Once you start teleporting to locations, you do end up running out of breath for a few seconds, giving survivors the chance to run away from you and hold you off for as long as they can while the others are repairing generators and healing each other. This is considered a waste of time, as the Nurse needs to cool down, yet this would pressure players to either keep chasing the survivor they are targeting or teleport to other locations where the Nurse can destroy the gens. Yet again, Nurse will always run out of breath after teleportation and isn't as fast as the other killers like Legion or Hillbilly for instance. So in response, she is the slowest killer of them all. And to be honest with you, I don't like slow killers. I don't like the way the Nurse destroys the pallets, as this further showcases her slow way of touching things. Even using teleportation can make you end up mishitting your target or ramming into a wall by accident, and that really is a pain in the ass that I cannot cope with. It takes loads of time to get used to playing as Nurse, getting used to missing your shots, and I'd recommend playing as a killer that doesn't waste so much time to get used to playing as, because this will, in conclusion, lead to rage quitting. Number 38 is Hillbilly. Now, Hillbilly is a fast killer and definitely one of the best characters to play as, but in my opinion, I don't think so. Playing against, yes, but not as the actual killer. Now, I can see that the Hillbilly does have his advantages, such as using the Kindred perk, whatever, where he silently hits and chainsaws survivors without their awareness, which is one effective strength to embrace. Even Lightborn, where he's immune to light, and especially the part where he chainsaws the survivors with one hit rather than having to hit them twice. He can also break a pallet with his weapon in 1 second, considered to be the fastest killer while with the use of his chainsaw. However, as he is similar to the Nurse when it comes to mishitting his targets, it really is a nightmare. I sort of did enjoy playing this killer without having to speed boost, but I can't stand it when I'm using the weapon to down the survivors. Most of the time I always end up hitting a rock, and even when I'm targeting one individual while they are behind the pallets, I don't even know when it's the time to start using the chainsaw just so I can avoid being pallet stunned. I think the thing that makes Hillbilly a pain is indeed his chainsaw, because of the way he handles his weapon, which is really out of control, puzzling players on how to properly use his weapon so that they can avoid missing their shots. Even having to run in different directions can be quite difficult to control Hillbilly on exactly where you want him to attack. And to be clear, this is generally chaos. It also takes a long time to get used to playing as Hillbilly, so the advice I give to myself is to play as the cannibal instead, where I can easily control his chainsaw, also depending on what add-ons I'm using to extend or lessen the control. I don't despise the Hillbilly, I think he is a sick killer and one of the most terrifying monsters I have ever witnessed, since I love his appearance. But playing as him is what's infuriating due to the out-of-control chainsaw that leads to moments of tension, especially when you end up hitting unimportant things in your way. Number 37 is Oni. Oni is also known to be one of the best killers in DBD. However, his speed boost is quite aggravating, but in slight control than the Hillbilly at least. When playing as the Oni a few times, I didn't have to use his speed boost, so I continued to attack the survivors using the killer's sword. Since survivors find it a lot easier to take down Oni without him on Blood Fury, which helps them manage to repair as many gens as possible, this is where the players as Oni may feel forced to not only absorb all of the blood cells, but to put Oni in Blood Fury mode so that the killer can speed up and catch the survivors. As you can see, the main thing with this core issue is that Oni can also be out of control while on Fury mode, and having to use his club to down people is what's difficult to handle. Like when I played as Oni on Blood Fury, I recall a moment where I managed to hit a survivor while the player vaulted. But when I did, the survivor was supposed to go down. Instead, he escaped, as I noticed that I actually ended up hitting the ground or the vault itself, which was really annoying. From my perspective, it kind of looked like that I actually did hit the survivor, as I wasn't even aiming for the ground or vault. But that is because the club is used to go down rather than having to hit players by stabbing them forward. With Oni, he doesn't carry a knife or a blade that I use to stab survivors forward. Instead, he uses a club to bash down players that many people find challenging, which is why they use his sword instead and refuse going on Fury mode. As killer, I'm more used to using much lighter weapons than a club, because having to use a club and miss downing survivors also makes the Oni continue to beat the ground a few times after he misses his shots, while his targets are escaping. Even when playing against the Oni on Fury mode, survivors can still find it much easier to avoid being downed by him by vaulting, or when being chased by him as the Oni closely approaches them, the survivors can turn around and run in another direction, a side of Oni that can pressure the killer to mistakenly hit the ground or unable to stop and ram into a wall. This is one of those main reasons why people don't tend to play as Oni so often, but instead play as Chucky, Unknown, Legion, and many other killers that aren't so out of control and don't find it so challenging to stab survivors than having to use a heavy weapon.